Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming along for this session. So basically, what I'm going to do in the next hour is to give you an introduction to a core service that we have, which is the Microsoft Health Bot. Which is I know that some of you already attended yesterday. I think we used to have a session on all of the options that we have in the Microsoft stack to build the bot, and I think the session was titled "3 Different Ways to Create a Bot." So today I'm going to be talking about it's not a fourth way, but it's more customized way to create bots, which basically creating healthcare purpose-built bots for the healthcare systems. So without further to introduce anything, I think you already know me. So I work for a department at Microsoft UK called the Customer Success Unit. So basically my main role is to help Microsoft strategic customers to architect, design, and maintain resilient cloud solutions. And I'm part of a team called the App Innovation team. So my main purpose is basically allow customers to innovate in the cloud. So I'm not part of the team that actually deals with the actual move to the cloud. Most of my time I spend customers who are already mature, who already moved to the cloud, 3, 5, 4 years ago. So our main job is to help them innovate in the cloud, and part of that is to help them build intelligent pods, build blockchain solutions, pass first approach, all of these cool stuff. So before talking about the specific technology, I want to give you a little bit. Some of you already knew it. We are quite fortunate to live in a country where we have free healthcare system, the NHS. But really, some of us, there is I think 10 to 15% of the workforce relies on private healthcare at the same time. But it doesn't really matter whether you are dealing with public or private healthcare system. There are the problems that we are dealing with. These different healthcare system falls into 4 different pockets, and from a theme perspective, it all relies on the efficiency and how to deliver the best quality healthcare system, and at the same time you need to maintain utilization of your resources, whether they are nurses, doctors, even physical resources like theater rooms or these kind of things. So while the innovation in medical treatment continue to improve over time, many healthcare providers are still burdened by lengthy and archaic processes and manual input in terms of inputting this information to legacy system, which is still the case wherever you go, whether this is in the UK or beyond. So what's more, emergency rooms, given these unprecedented times that we live in, the growth of these emergency rooms are, there is a demand to grow them, and they are more crowded than ever, with patients who lack critical conditions and interacting with fragmented system of healthcare papers. And when you are a doctor, you have to deal with a lot of different systems, digital, paper-based, even the ops-based, how the nurses are collating those ops. And the hospital may have a different version of the truth of your data, and your GB has a completely different ones, and the data is out of sync. So as I said, no matter where you go, we are talking about inefficiencies everywhere. And this is not necessarily because of a single healthcare provider don't want to do it, but basically it's because of the processes, and they have to implement certain standards in order for them to deliver that. So what we aim to do with the health bot service, so basically we said we need to create a service that would allow all of these healthcare providers to build compliant, resilient, standard-based health bots to their customers. And this service is not just for customers. So initially it was delivered or aimed to be built for partners initially, to allow them to build and deploy compliant AR-powered virtual health assistants. But through the natural conversation experience, this health assistant bot would provide the end user, which is the patients, intelligence and personalized access to the most relevant and accurate healthcare services and information. So the aim of this service is basically collate all of the services that we have at the Microsoft stack, whether this is the bot framework, the conversation designer, the Lewis Q&A maker, all of that into a single pane of glass. So you will go there, create your bot in a natural way, and obviously this tool doesn't really require a deep development experience, because most of your tasks you will be doing into something like a portal. You'll go there, you'll create your bot. So this health bot service will allow the healthcare organization to customize and build, which is a really important thing. So right now, when you put, with the bot framework, for example, so this is like a, a piece of, or a container of Legos that you have to build yourself. So we'll give you the Legos, and it's up to you to decide whether this will be a health bot, whether this will be a retail-based bot, whether this will be a simple Q&A maker bot. It's up to you. But basically, what we wanted with the health bot service is to create this layer of abstraction across all of the services that we have to be tactically targeting to the health providers, the healthcare providers. One of the amazing, the great things that come up with that is, if you are going to build a health bot, you have to be compliant with all of the healthcare standards. So when you look at the ISO 27001, the HEPA standard for the US, the GDPR in the EU, all of that has to be, no matter what you do, you have to comply with that. If you're going to call it a health bot, there should be an assumption that this health bot service is compliant, which is pretty much what we've done. So instead of you have to worry about these compliant, we've built this compliant layer as part of the solution, not just as part of the service. So obviously, bot framework is compliant. I'm not saying it is not, but basically, when you build a layer of, or a solution on top of that, it's your responsibility as an architect or as an app developer to make sure that the solution, not the service, is compliant, which is basically what the bot service has done. So what's inside this bot service? It's basically, we have, as I said, you will be able to build this trusted bot, trusted conversation healthcare experience throughout the virtual assistant without you be able to create all of these end-to-end experiences without you need to worry about all of these bits and pieces. You just go to a simple place where you can author and design your conversation and integrate with them, with your APIs, with your services, with visualization technologies, with different channels, the same way that you used to do that in the bot framework, but it's like a consolidation way of doing all of that. So from a feature perspective, we combined the cognitive models and the language understanding. We already pre-built as part of this bot service. We have a pre-built healthcare purpose-built language understanding model. So for you who knew Lewis, the language understanding intelligence services in Azure, we've built a custom Lewis model for the healthcare system. So things like symptom checkers, triage services, certain names where you need to integrate with the HMS systems, the healthcare medical systems, if you need to integrate with that. So we've built the models that can enable you to not only to understand what the user are intending to say, but also to enable you to integrate those systems with your medical records. Because if you're going to build a healthcare system, healthcare bot, you have to integrate with your healthcare system, because if they are complaining about something or they are seeking some of their information, you have to get this information for the HMS system. So that's what we've done. So let's look at one of the examples, which basically, the title of this session is building a COVID-19 assessment bot using this service. So before showing you how to build it, I need to show you the output of it. So one of the great examples of this service is the usage of the CDC, the US CDC, which is basically a department responsible for all of the viral diseases. So they built an assessment bot for the symptoms for the COVID-19, and they've published that on their website. So if I go to their portal, so if I stop sharing and share again, let me put my screen down. Too many monitors, so I have to stop sharing. Yes. and share again. I hope you can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
So if I go to the CDC main website, there is a self-checker bot on the right hand side. So if I click on self-check, that will initiate the bot. So this bot has been built by the by the Microsoft Health Bot service. And as you can see, the first thing it says, just a disclaimer that this is not for you to. There's no diagnostic happening. It's just a way for you to understand whether you need care or not. It's not really a diagnosis or whether you already have coronavirus or not. So I say, yeah, I agree. So let's have a look. Let's kick in the conversation. So the first question is, are you in US or outside US? I will pretend that I'm within the US because I need to show you the details, like where are you live now? Because one of the things that they are trying to collate here is the number of requests coming from different states. So I'll say I'm in Alabama. Hit submit. Let's have a look. So first question: are you ill? Yes. I'm not. Hopefully, I will not. Are you answering for yourself or someone else? I'll say myself. I'll go the age, and then ask me female or male. Go answer those few questions. So the first question is. This is the fourth question. The fourth question is trying to distinguish between whether you have a critical condition that would require you to call 911 in the US or 999 in the UK. So there's something you have to call someone urgently. But I would say, no, I'm not experiencing any life-threatening symptoms. So I'll go here. Go to the new message. Do you have the following? Moderate to severe, all of these things. Well, I'll make it harder. I would say no, I'm not having any of that. So I will pretend that as if I have a mild symptoms of coronavirus. I'm not going to say that I have these difficulties right now. So I'll say none of the above because I need to continue the conversation. That triggers the further of the way of the COVID-19, right? So I'm going deeper in the conversation right now. So the one of the main questions to judge whether you're already exposed to COVID-19 is, are you living in a location where COVID-19 is spreading? So obviously most of the world right now is having that right now. So I'll say yes. So this is what I want to show you. So it's the question now is, what type of symptoms that you have right now? So I'll check, randomly 2 of them, or I would say 3 of them right now. So I'll say submit, and let's see what it will respond. The other question is, are you living in a facility or a nursing home? I would say no. And then in the last 2 weeks, have you worked or volunteered in a hospital or emergency room? I would say no. So this question is trying to check whether I am within the vulnerable group. If you heard the news, there are particular people that are more vulnerable to COVID-19. So I would say, let's pretend that I'm one of them, because if I said no, it will ask me. So if I said none of the above, it will tell me, you have to stay home for at least 2 weeks and call us back. But I would say, yeah, I have something like this, just to check. So what it says now, sorry for you feeling sick, you have to call us within 24 hours. You need to start home isolation, and these are the advice for you. So pretty much it's if you go to NHS 111, pretty much the same thing. Obviously there are different vocabularies for the things that the CDC are using compared to the NHS, the UK NHS, but pretty much it's the same thing. So what I want to show you how we build this, how this COVID-19 assessment bot has been built. So if I go to if you go to healthbot.microsoft.com or admin.healthbot.com, the first image or the first page is basically the templates that are included in this bot service. So as you can see here, the top 4 are related to the COVID-19 response. So the from left to right, we have the triage bot. So in any health system, you have this idea of triaging, which basically you need to get the ops of the patients. You need to ask them a few questions, and you need to decide whether they need a nurse or a GP, or you need to decide what type of care that you need to provide for them. So this is the triage one. The second one is the FAQ. So things like what it is, what are the symptoms, how can I isolate myself, what are the risks, what are the vulnerable groups, all of these certain things includes, and this template includes the live data. So like if you want to ask what are the number of fatalities in the UK's, it will go to query the data and give it to you. And as you can see, there is this little icon in each template to tell you the source of the data, because the triage process, as I said, it is different in the UK compared to America, and not just the US. Within the US, it's different from one health provider to another. But initially, all of that is customized. Initially, it's the CDC, but if you need to decide that you need to customize that, it's absolutely possible. And I've done that, and this is the one that I'm going to show you in just a minute. So the third one is the metrics. As I said, it's just a worldwide metrics, like the top countries that has a fatality rate or the number of infections, all of that, whether the curve is bending in certain country or not, all of these certain things. And the last one is the assessment. One thing I have to say here is the assessment one is like it's the core of the first and the second one. So the triage actually depends on the assessment. So the assessment is like the core, because you can't triage without asking those assessment questions like, do you have a temperature? Do you have a fever? Do you have a shortness of breath? All of these initial questions. So the assessment is basically the core, and the triage is a layer on top of that. So any questions so far before I'll dive into the bot itself and show it to you?
Don't think so far, Saffi. No.
That's good. So what I'm going to do here, I've already done this. If I go to manage, and as you can see here, I have 3 templates. So basically what I wanted to show you is just 2 flavors of the COVID-19. If you go to create a template, so if I go to, again, to the template catalog and create a COVID-19, once you click on it, it will give you kind of a disclaimer, because basically where is the data comes from, the instruction for that. It's basically how the conversation will go, and you click import if you agree on into that, because obviously since we are dealing with health data and health information, one of the things is the data residency and all of that. So it's important to understand. And one of the things that this health bot service provides for you is to surface the data that has been stored in the service, but also a retention policy attached to that. So you have the option is basically after you complete the conversation with the patient, you have the option to delete it and let the patient know that you've deleted all of the data, all of this data, and they no longer have to worry about that. So once we click import, you will be redirected to the manage page automatically, which basically this is it. So once you create a triage, you will find 2. Let me sort out by today. So once you create a triage, you will have 2 bots. So if I go here, you see this core COVID-19 core. So this is the assessment that I talked about, and this is the layer on top of it, which is basically the customer wrapper. The custom wrapper is basically the triaging or the routing of the very customized way of doing things. So one of the things that the assessment will ask you is, where do you live, right? So if you really has been identified by the bot that you in the risk group, it will go to query the nearest E&E department and get the information. So that's why it asks you in the beginning of the conversation, where do you live? And that's why. So the core is basically relies on just the question, the Q&A related to COVID specifically, but the custom wrapper is basically all of the custom layer on top of this core to be able to customize the output for a particular patient. So let's have a look at this one. So let me have a go and continue. It says I already opened that. So this is the core protocol. So from left to right, this is the designer. This is the health bot service designer. So in the middle here, you can drag and drop actions and execute them. On the right hand side, top right here, this is the simulator or the emulator, where you can run the bot, save the bot, run the bot, and then you will be able to see how it works. And on right down here, it's like the inspector. So if you've used a bot framework before, so the bot emulator, the Azure bot emulator, it has this feature. So we've included that as well in order for you to watch variables, change them on the fly, and debug the bot in the browser. So you don't have to leave the browser to test and debug the bot. So this is the designer. Behind the design, there is the code. So the code here is just a JSON template, because basically everything that every drag and drop item here represented by a JSON in the backend or behind the scenes. So if I go here a little bit, scroll down. So let's kick in this. So let's see what's included. So I'll need to save and then run. And let's see how this bot will respond to me. You see this? I think if you recall from the CDC, that was the 4th or the 6th question that I got asked, right? And as I said, so the CDC and this triage bot is just a layer on top of that. So I'll go to the flow. One thing I need you to see here, there is some highlighting happening, right? So this has been executed. This is like a switch statement to decide, because this bot support 5 different languages. So it support English, Korean, Vietnamese, Spanish. I can't remember what's Chinese, I think. So 5 different languages. So because I'm already choosing English US, so I got right. So if I change the language, I will get redirected to a different language. But I will say yes. One thing I need to show you here. Remember, this is like a breakpoint. It's highlighted in lime that I'm standing right now in this step. So I'd say yes, and immediately, if you see here, it's go to the second question, the following question, which is who? Is that you or for someone else? So I'll say yes for myself, and it keeps going to the end of the conversation. So what is your age? So it chooses again 3 to this one. Again, it goes to gender, say male. This is the 911 symptoms. As I said, it decides, do you want to go to the hospital right now or not? So I'd say none of the above, or I'm not experiencing any life-threatening. And immediately it goes to the following question, none of the above. So let's go to the COVID-related questions now. So let's go to Expo. So this point, this is the COVID-19 symptom checker. So this is at that point, it's just for me to go through the COVID path. So I'll say yes, and then I'll go to the actual questions. So I'll say a couple of them. I'll say submit. So if I go to immediate, so go to watch, because I need to show you here. Do you live in? No, I'll say no. So it already. Yes. This is the risk factor. Yes. Let's go to choose any one of these risk factors. So as you can see here, this is the outcome. So the last thing here, if I go, let's go submit. So one thing I need to show you down here is like the stack trace. So for every step, you can see like the timestamp for the execution, and this is like a log of the execution of the conversation. Another thing you can do is to define, and this is something I'll show you in just a minute, you can define and you can collate information. What are the number of questions coming from a specific region or a specific area, or the age distribution of those people who are actually interacting with the bot. So that actually gives the CDC and would give the NHS, and actually we are doing similar with one of the UK-based institution to do similar thing. But basically, that will give them an indication about the number of people who are actually asking those questions. And if there is a certain volume coming from certain areas, that will enable them to be proactively reaching out to these people if they agree to. And things like contact tracing and all of that, that would be much easier if you can correlate this information with real-time information. So this is just a pre-built, right? So this is what's included. So let's say I need to change the first thing I might need to change is maybe I need to make this a little bit customized to the UK triage process, right? So what I can do is go to each one of these services. If I'm not happy, let's say as part of the L1, if I go to the 9111 checker here, maybe in the 911 symptoms, it's not really those things. So if I go to here, these are the conditions, the 91 conditions. So let's say that maybe in the UK I have another one, right? So all I need to do is just double click on that one. So I have the LTS 911 symptoms, right? So I have a choices array that has these valuables, right? These values in it. So if I need to add or remove, all I need to do is just to go to this array, add or remove the values, and it will automatically populate it in here. So let's say I need to call in another service. So let's say these critical conditions are coming from a REST API, right? So maybe they are changing on a daily basis, or given the situation that's happening right now, maybe the criteria would change. Maybe they will accept people with a little mild conditions early enough so they can take an action on that. So if that's the case, maybe I need to integrate with a REST API or a data service. So all I need to do is just go to data connection, drag it in here in the service, double click on it, and I can go to the page of the URL. So this is basically creating a data connection to any REST-based service, whether it's REST or a SOAP, any web service, basically. So basically, the option for the responses, you can choose what type of HTTP methods. So it's a GET or POT or POST. You can choose the response type, the content type, whether will be raw or this is a form data where you can auto-populate from a list of variables that you have. So you don't have to write code for that. Well, you can, but the designer itself enables you to just pick and choose one of them and disable and add and remove. So if I need to, for example, I need to enhance the bot to invoke a Q&A service, right? I can do it from here. I can do it for this specific scenario because remember, this is the core protocol, or this is the code triage process. But what if I need to make these changes to be available across all of my bot services? So remember, I have 3 templates. So let me cancel that. If I go here, so I have 3 templates here. I have 3. So what if I need to create a data connection that will be available across all of these scenarios? So I already showed you how to create that here using the data connection, which will be a private data connection for this protocol. But if I need to make it global, I'll go to integration, I'll go to data connection, I'll hit add, and I'll be able to create this global connection the same way I've done it. The one option here is the FHIR support, which is a specific protocol for the healthcare system. So if you are familiar with HL7, FHIR, it's pretty much similar. It's an extension of it. So it's a healthcare specific protocol. So if you need to support that, where just enable that. So one of the things that FHIR require is any PII data has to be hashed on the way in, at rest, and over the wire. So this is basically you will offload all of these encryption and hashing to Microsoft or the service to do it for you, so you don't have to write the code to that. So we support it for you, and you put the URL and you put the authentication. So if let's say that you have to go to an authentication endpoint, so let's say that the REST API is secured by Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. So obviously you need to authenticate it. So you need to put the authentication provider in here as well. You can add the headers and the URL parameter. So if you just put the header or the query string if you want to. So it's pretty much straightforward. So this is for the data connection. But let's look at the localization. So what I did, if I go to the templates, so if I go here, go to the scenarios, template catalog. Manage. So one of the customers here in the UK, I can't say who, but basically wanted to create we were exploring a bot that would enable not just English, but English and Scottish language. So basically, in order for this bot to support that, we needed to enable the localization of that bot. So what I did is just went here, went to language, went to localization. So if I go to Welsh, for example, and what I did, I have the English, the standard one, the out of box one, and I did the translation. And this is you can either rely on the Microsoft Translate service to auto-populate those strings for you, or which is the preferred one, especially if we are talking about a healthcare, it's just you translate them and with the custom vocabularies, because sometimes you will need a native speaker. So what I did is basically I enabled translation between English and Welsh. So if I go to the scenario, which is this one, sorry, not this one. Oh, neither. So if I go to the scenarios again, went to this assessment, hit save, and let's choose run. So if I go to English GB or CYGB, let's save, let's run. Pretty much the same thing. So I say yes. It is populating in all Welsh if I need to. So the localization is as simple as doing that in the browser. But so I'll go here. I'll go assess. Actually, I don't understand Welsh. Just in case you ask, I just use Bing Translate to translate all of that. But if you understand Welsh or you want to do it, so this is as simple as going to the localization and populate all of the translation that you want to do. So if I go again to the bot service, go to another feature, which is the models. So what actually happens when you create a scenario? So basically, once you go to the scenarios and choose one of those templates, we will auto-populate all of these language model for you. So as you can see here, we have this standard built-in medical information request. So things like the condition checks, the causes, the complications, whether you need specialists to have a look into that. So we built all of these language model. So if the patient said, well, I need a cardiologist, so the bot will understand what a cardiologist means, and you can take an action on that in the conversation designer in the flow. So you don't have to create the lowest model that would enable you to understand a cardiologist is pretty much the same as if you said a heart doctor or a heart specialist. It's pretty much the same language. So we've built that for you. The same thing applies for medical complaints that would triage. So if you said, I was waiting for Dr. X to give me a call on Saturday the 16th, for example, but he didn't reply. So obviously the bot can't say anything. So the best idea is basically route them to the triage room. What the triage could be another channel, which I will show you in a minute. So basically, once you create a template, once you choose one of those models, out of the box you will have all of these pre-built models. But obviously, there are custom models that I've created. So I've created a provider lookup. So one of the things I wanted to do here is I went to the NHS. So let me go here. Went to the NHS, find a GB service, right? And Control-Shift-I, I wanted to see the service that actually in the NHS website doing behind the scenes. So basically, this page, it will ask for a postcode, and it will search behind the scenes the list of the GBs near you, right? So if I hit search, so this is the service, this is the actual model itself. So if I click on that one, so this is the request URL, and this is the post, and this is the headers that I have to include. So things like the cookie. So all of that I can include. So if I go to the service itself, I've created a provider lookup. So in the provider lookup, I'm creating a data source, and within that data source, I'm relying on the provider lookup service to say, if he said I need a GB, the next question or the following question would be, where do you live? Can you give us your address code? And I will take that address code or the postcode, I will send it to the service, and the service will give me a list of providers, which in this case, the GP. You can extend that to include not only GPs, but GPs, hospitals, A&Es, all of that. But for that scenario, I've created that just provider lookup. So for you, you can go add if you need to create a new model, and you have two options for the methods. Either you use the NLB, the lowest in this example, or the Q&A maker. So I'm pretty sure that you've heard about the Q&A maker if you've attended the yesterday's session. So basically, the Q&A maker is a service that would enable you to create bots that would answer simple questions, straightforward questions, like, if you have an FAQ page in your website and you need to put a bot on top of that, you can create them. So basically, simple questions, straightforward questions, Q&A maker can handle that. So all you need to do, if you go to Q&A, so let's go to Q&A maker, go to my services, create your service, and get the code, get the access key for that bot service, and give us the knowledge base ID, the host point, and you will have a new model that will go to that go to that Q&A maker. So what I would do, let's go to the CDC again. Go to go to symptoms. Go to, let me go CDC COVID-19 FAQ. So this is the FAQ for the COVID-19 on the CDC. We have a similar thing in the UK NHS 11, but in the UK NHS 11 it's pretty much fragmented. It's not a single page. So you would have to go to, if I go to NHS COVID-19 FAQ. That's the coronavirus website for the NHS. So if I click on this one, I copy this one, copy the URL, go to the service, and pretty much this is what I need to do. Is just go choose the tenant. Obviously, I have a single service. So I'll go to here. This is my knowledge base. So basically, what I need to do is just go within the service. If I go to settings until it loads. So basically, so I go to settings first, just to show you how it works. So basically, you put the URL here, put the URL, and once you create it, you can add new files. So basically, I'm adding the chit chat, which is, what is your name? I don't have a name. Where do you live? I'm just a bot. All of these simple questions and simple URL. So whether you have the knowledge within an FAQ page or you have these Q&A pairs in an Excel or TSV file, you can upload them as well. So I already done this. So if I go to edit, these are the Q&A pair. So as you can see, there is the name, this is the context, which is really important because one of the things that you can create with the Q&A maker is to have a chain of questions. So if he said, I live in a high-risk area, the following question would be, do you have symptoms? And if he said yes, what are those symptoms? Those kind of chain of questions. You can't answer them. You can't ask them question randomly. So it's a chain of questions. So once you do that, so I'll go to publish because this is the bit that I need. Go to publish this. Once I publish this, I will be able to get a URL so I can use it in that service. One of the things I need to do here is, where do I want to route these intent mapping? So I have 4 scenarios. I have 3 scenarios that I showed, or I can make it just a built-in Q&A maker that will be available globally across all of my scenarios, which is what I want to. So if I go here, so this is the knowledge base ID, which is this one. copy, paste the knowledge base ID, and I need the, what's happening? I need the URL. This is the host, right? And put it that way, and the key. So in order for me to get the key, settings, start test. Yes, start over. Yes, this is the authorization key. So I'll copy the key and put it in the service. That's it. So one thing here, if you did anything with the bot framework before, there is this confidence threshold. So we used to have, actually we still have this tool, the dispatcher tool. So in some situation, you might find yourself that the user is asking a question or replying with an answer that may fall into two different buckets of your knowledge domain. So maybe they are asking a question that could be answered by the FAQ, or there is an answer in the FAQ, but at the same time, that answer could be routed to an agent, for example, to handle with. So that's why the confidence threshold is a really key here. So right now, if I would rely on like 75% confidence score that this question can be answered by the Q&A maker, I would route it to them. Anything below than that, I would leave them to the triage, because one of the things that you have to know about the Q&A maker compared to Lewis is that the Q&A maker is pretty much a static question and answer spare. So if you didn't really set that this is a variation of that question, the Q&A maker won't know that. So if I go to here, if I go to the Q&A maker here, if I go to the knowledge page itself, if I go to edit, so if someone said COVID-19, it will get picked up. But if I didn't create a COVID-19 word in here, this question will not be picked up. It's unlike Lewis. Lewis would do a machine understanding on top of that. But I would say that this is COVID-19 FAQ. That's it. This is the intent mapping. I'll say that this is the same thing. COVID-19 FAQ. This is the this is the combination of CDC and NHS COVID-19 data. COVID-19 FAQ data, right? Right, so I'll hit create. Okay, maybe because of the tag. Pretty sure the same. Go to here. Knowledge base ID. That's it. That's it. Okay. Doesn't like it. So once you create this one, I already included that as part of my provider lookup anyway. All I need to do is just go to the model itself, go to one of those models in order for me to utilize it. So one thing I have to say here, if you added that one, it will be available to your model, but it's your responsibility to go to the conversation designer, which is in this scenario itself, go to manage, go to the core one, which is I already open in here, and you take an action on that. So I can add an action, whether I write a code to invoke that service, or I can invoke scale. See this one? Double click on the scale. It'll ask you what type of scale ID. So basically all I need to do is just provide a scale ID. So the FAQ would be a scale. The lowest would be another scale that you can invoke as a response to that. So if they said, what are the symptoms for COVID-19? So once they said the symptoms of COVID-19, you will automatically know that the service itself will pick that up and knows that there is an answer with a confidence score more than 75% that will invoke that skill, which is the FAQ. So the last thing I need to say here is, what if some of the questions hasn't been picked up by the service? Obviously, it's inevitable. So there is a tab in here called the unrecognized utterances. So users ask few questions that you have no idea about. So basically, these are historical information. So what I wanted to test the service is, I wanted to know that it doesn't really understand anything about COVID. So I asked it. That was a month ago. I've sent a message before creating any template, so it didn't really understand anything about it. And even after, choosing it, so things like serious health conditions. So this is a really recent one, which is a bug in my bot. So I have to find this out. So as you can see here, there is a list of unrecognized utterances. So one of the utterances is it's not in the correct format. Instead of passing the serious health condition as a string, it passed that as a JSON format. So I have to cast that one in my conversation design. Another thing is the conversation log. So you can, if the customers allow or if the patient allow, is that you can dump their question or the conversation logs. So you can do that as well if the configuration settings, which is the compliance settings, allow that. So before showing you the logs, if I go to compliance first, so this is the built-in compliance that I talked about. There is this privacy, which is basically you for all of your conversation, you can say to your patient that these are the information that I know about you to be compliant. You can tell them these are the historical information that I'm storing right now, like your ID, your name, where do you live, all of that I have information. And actually, as part of this conversation, you can ask them, do you want me to delete all of this historical information? If the user said yes, it will be automatically deleted from the database. It's already stored. So all of these flows is already included, so you don't have to worry about that to be compliant. But if the settings allow that, so if I go to security, so one of the things is the timeout and the timeout message. So how many minutes that the bot will be waiting for you. So up until now, everything I've done myself in the service, but in real world, you need to have a collaboration methodology, right? So the collaboration is basically managing by the users. You can have multiple users to author and to change the model. So if I go to manage, right now I have myself only, but I can add like an editor. So you have 3 users, 3 roles: admin, editor, or reader. So I'll add an editor for my personal account, which is this one, ali@outlook.com. Let's hit create, user added. So if I copy this one, if I go a new in private window, said admin .healthbot.com, it will prompt me to log in. So I'll enter my credential here, outlook.com, hit next, send a notification because I have a 2-factor authentication. Yeah, I'm gonna approve it right now. That's it. So because this is the first time, it says the bot will read some of your information. I'll say yes, I'm fine with that. Said yes, it's still loading. So after a second or two, it should populate. So if you have any questions, guys, I know that you're not the owner. So if I go to, because I'm not the owner, if I go to healthbot, if I go to the other page, which is this one, if I go to one of their designers, which is this one, copy. Because remember, the page that I hit was the admin ones, because I'm not the admin. Okay. But you get the idea, right? So if you have any questions, just feel free to do it. I know we have 10 minutes left. So, but if anybody has any questions, just feel free to pop it in here.
Hi, Saffi.
Yeah, I can see a question. Someone wanted to go to helpbot.microsoft and says the page not found. So can you go to admin.helpbot.microsoft.com, please? Because you have to sign up first. So go to admin. So I'll put so as you can see here, I've already logged in because I'm an editor, so I can edit the bot, but not an admin. So if I go to here, so I'll put you the link. So let me copy it. Admin. Yeah, this is the one. Copy. Put it in the chat window. So I'll close this one because I no longer need it. But this is basically it. So again, just to summarize, so this thing is basically for healthcare based bots. It's basically for this purpose, and a lot of the best value you will get if you are going to build a healthcare bot. And one thing I have to mention here is just I want to put some slide, just a second, which is the list of use cases. I'm sure you see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, so basically we have the CDC, obviously, this is the one that I've showed you. We have Providence, which is Providence and Walgreens. So Walgreens Boots, which is, we have the Boots arm in the UK. Walgreens is the other part of the alliance in the US. So Walgreens is using the same service for COVID-19 specific scenarios. But before the COVID-19 issue and pandemic, we used to have an independent health providers in the UK and in Europe and around in the US, basically. So each one of them has different approaches to use the health bot. So they have, as part of their, because in the US, for example, they have hundreds of those healthcare providers, and each one of them has their own customized health solutions, which would include the mobile apps. So a lot of the FAQs, assessment, triaging, it's already included in the app, which is pretty phenomenal if you are paying too much money to get this private insurance and private healthcare. Primera does this, Aurora. So you can go to that website to understand more about the use cases. And the good thing about it is not just the reference architecture, but actually some of the models are really open source. So if you go to GitHub, you will find some of these models you can download and import and try to start to play with them. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say, really. I have another question, which is the code available for GitHub? So basically, if I go here, so let me stop doing this. So basically, if you go to here, if I go to language, manage, you don't have to write code. So basically, if I say, click on one of them, and I need export, let's export this. So this is the format type. So do you want to format a native or adaptive dialog? And this is not the code. This is the JSON. So if I native this one, and this is it. Let's open the file. This is what you will get. A JSON representation of what I have in that scenario. It's not really a C# code or anything like that. But having said that, you can export them to be used in the bot framework as a adaptive dialog. So if I export them again as an adaptive dialog, that's still in preview, but it's a good feature that you can utilize if you want to have a combination of both the health bot servers with an existing bot that you have. So you can do both. So you don't really have to have you don't get code for say, but in terms of reusability, this is how you're going to export them. Another question, which is let me find out. Is the code available for downloading GitHub? So there are some templates, the one that I just showed you, are already included in GitHub. So if you go to the Microsoft repo in GitHub and search for the assessment, the health bot service, you'll find dozens of them. It installs via the Azure portal, and it is free. Yeah, it is free. So basically, to choose, once you sign up, it will ask you what plan. So I'm using the free plan right now, which is a 3K monthly messages, which is pretty much for development purposes, not really for real use. So imagine that you're creating a COVID-19 for the NHS and you're using the free tier. So obviously you will hit that in the first second. But yeah, you can play with it right now if you have this much volume.